Hi. Good morning. Nice to be here with you all. So this is our third presentation, as George mentioned, and let's get right into it. Please ask questions. Please share your stories, give us feedback, and like he said, we'll be available after for one-on-ones if you don't feel comfortable sharing or want to dive deeper into your application and what's going on with your business. Okay, so today we're going to talk about maximizing inbox placement and deliverability. Would anyone care to share what, if they believe that there's a difference between inbox placement and email deliverability? Two different things? Yeah, you're right. So they are two different things. And throughout this, we're going to be focusing on inbox placement because that's the most important thing, and that's what you guys as marketers have control over. Infusionsoft handles deliverability for you. So by raise of hands, has anyone experienced any dip in opens, any email metrics, August, September of this year? No? You have? Yeah. So I just want to touch on that. It was a global issue. So it wasn't just Infusionsoft, it was a global issue, and unfortunately Infusionsoft was impacted by that. So what happened? Well, we have about 35,000 customers, and all of those customers have web forms seeded throughout their websites all over the world. And what happened was, there's a lot of malicious, bad people out there that will attack those web forms for their own gain. And that's kind of what spam is about. So we're going to go into why they would do that and what the effects of that were. Okay, so what happened? There were over 10,000 websites globally attacked. Spamhaus, which is a huge blacklisting service, listed hundreds of IPs, and unfortunately, Infusionsoft was part of that. So why would someone do this? Why would someone attack web forms? Why would someone hurt businesses? The best example that I found is, everyone here have a credit card? Yeah? Has anyone had fraudulent purchases on a credit card? Unfortunately, yeah, right? Not good, not good. So when that happens, you get an email, a notification, saying, hey, your card, a text message sometimes, but probably an email as well, saying, hey, your account has been compromised. And so what happens is people will use your email address maliciously and list bomb with it, meaning it will submit on web forms, so you get tons and tons of emails. And they do that because the hope is that they flood your inbox with emails, so you miss those important emails. So you have fraud on your card, well, you're not going to see that email if you're getting thousands of emails from businesses all over the world. And so that's kind of the intent behind this. And unfortunately, Infusionsoft was impacted by that. So I want to go over what we did to mitigate that. Just a quick rundown. So August, September, we had web forms attacked. Tons of emails were sent out to email addresses that didn't opt in for email. And we saw our IPs got blacklisted. And we saw a decrease in our sender score, so we saw a decrease in deliverability and inbox placement, and also filtering, meaning when email was sent to various ISPs, ESPs like Gmail, Hotmail, email was going to the junk folder because we are deemed as malicious. And so that we identified that within hours of it happening, so on top of it. But about 30 days, we suffered the effects of that, and I'm sure some of you may have felt that along with many of our other customers all over the world. So the end of September, we start picking back up from that, and I want to show you some data that shows that we handled it, we took care of it, and things are better now. So what have we done? How did we fix the problem? So the first thing we've done is we use a third party to monitor IP reputation when people submit web forms. So the source of that, we look at that reputation and we decide, should we accept this email address submission or should we not? And this is a very, very big deal. This protects us from those people that are malicious and those people that have bad intentions and aren't really recipients that are coming onto your list that want your marketing and are going to buy from you. The second solution we currently have in development, so our engineers are working on this right now, is a conditional CAPTCHA. Is everyone here familiar with CAPTCHA? So there's some algorithms behind it. So I come to your website and I fill out a web form and I put my name and my email address in, and then I hit submit. And that's one submission, and that takes about 10, 15, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute. What conditional does is behind that, it looks at how long it takes submission to complete. And so if there's hundreds within a minute, that's not normal. No one person is sitting behind filling your web form out over and over and over again. So it's sort of inorganic behavior. Does that make sense? Yeah, so if we are able to catch that, then we can pop up a CAPTCHA that says, are you a real person? So the third solution we had was, obviously we isolated it very quickly. I mean, we knew within hours. It was overnight. I think I was up at 4 a.m. with alerts going, what's going on, what's going on? So we found out quickly what it was, and we reached out to those people impacted, and we started working with them closely. We also retroactively went back and cleaned out customer databases that had bad email addresses in them, so they weren't sending email to them anymore. So that's kind of what we've done so far to mitigate the issue, and we've seen the effects of that work. Specifically for the Brazilian market, you guys working with the Babel-Team and George, we have been in communication with Brazilian postmasters, so uol.com.br, bol.com.br, Hotmail, and so on. We've been working closely with them, figuring out how to get your emails delivered, what they look for, what they expect from us, how they view us. So there's been a lot of communication going back and forth with them, so we are working on that. The second solution is a dedicated IP space to the Babel-Team. And this is a feature we normally don't offer customers, but because of our partnership, we're carving out a space for only your apps, and we're going to begin to test that, where you guys get a set of dedicated IPs, separate from the rest of our traffic. And the third solution is, me and Zach are here in Brazil with you guys, speaking to you, meeting you, listening to your problems. We want your feedback and your questions. We want to help. So throughout this presentation, you're going to see a lot of data, a lot of charts, and a lot of references to something called Return Path. And they are a global email solutions provider. We have a partnership with them, and so we use them for inbox placement testing, sender score reputation, best practices, staying abreast of the email industry. So we have a pretty close partnership with them. As you can see here, they partner with 70 mailbox providers, over 2.5 billion inboxes they monitor. So we use data from that. So it's pretty reliable. It's third party, and it's only one metric that we use, but it's very reliable. And so at a glance, this data was taken from last week. So as you can see, that's from the 12th. And so this is a reassurance about inbox placement. This is a daily test. And so as you can see here from the 12th, of our tests that we send every single day, we have inbox placement of 100%. The image to your right here, you'll see, this is Latin America, you'll see BOL, IGmail, UOL. So this is when I say that we're working with Brazilian postmasters, this is what we're working on right here, is to get that to 100%. And these are only daily one-off tests, so this is not the end-all be-all, so maybe your mail is going to the inbox, but these are just one test that we do. Our sender score is another thing used by Return Path. If you look here, we are 98 across the board. When we were back in September, when we were having issues, we were roughly 79. So another metric that you can tell there was an issue. So this is again from the 12th, and we're back up. And what the sender score determines is basically a numerical representation of the likelihood that your email will go to the inbox. So as you can see, these are Infusionsoft IPs that we currently send from at 98. Return Path also has really interesting global statistics from countries all over. And so I just want to share with you some of the Brazilian statistics that they give about inbox placement. First, we'll go back to 2014, 2015, and then 2016 so far. take note down here, we'll see 74% inbox placement in 2015. So that's 26% of email didn't go to the inbox, from Brazil specifically. And then we see back in 2014, we're at about 60 to 40, so it's gotten better over the last 2 years. And then if we take a peek at so far this year, these 2 quarters, 80, 74, so total so far this year, 79%. So it's better, but there's definitely room for improvement, let's say. And so if you look at the national averages across, there's a huge world map of this. The United States is about 94%, to give you an idea of what other countries are. So sender reputation. So when we talk about sender reputation is your reputation as a sender, your business domain reputation. The best way to describe that is similar to a credit score. It's easier to maintain than to repair, and that's kind of a phrase that we use a lot. The better your sender reputation, the more likely you'll go to the inbox. So there's a couple things you can associate with sender reputation. IP reputation, for instance, the sending IP, which we maintain, Infusionsoft, your domain reputation, and your brand reputation. So this is an interesting graph. So to give you an idea where sender reputation comes into play and where it's important. So right here, this is Infusionsoft. This is Infusionsoft sending mail. This gateway is the recipient server. So if you are sending to bob@gmail.com, this is a Gmail server right here. So Infusionsoft sender reputation comes into play heavily at this gateway right here, the recipient server. From here, they can decide to block mail, or they can decide to accept mail for deliveries. If they block mail, Infusionsoft would get a bounce back. Is everyone familiar with bounces? They would get a bounce back. If they decide to accept it, then it goes to the spam filter. And this is where your sender reputation comes into play. There are several layers here, and they check content, they check your from domain, they check how many links you have in the mail, and then that is where it decides to go to the inbox or to the spam folder. So this is a very important piece right here. Infusionsoft is still involved in this, but it's more your sender reputation as a business at this point in time. And several layers go into this. Engagement, are people opening, are people clicking, what have they done with your mail previously? And this is where, for instance, Gmail will use complex algorithms to decide where to put your inbox, where to put email in the inbox based on opens, clicks. Do they forward the email? Do they open it? Did they delete it? A negative metric would be, did they delete it without looking at it? Do they never read it? So those would be negative metrics. Another interesting stat is 83% of the time email is not delivered is due to sender reputation. So that's a very, very large number. So what hurts your sender reputation? And I'm sure everyone's familiar with some of these. Hopefully not, but maybe. Excessive complaints, spam traps, spam content, unknown users, unengaged users, failing authentication. These all hurt your sender score. So Zach in a little bit is going to talk about things that you can do to combat that. Things like explicit permission, list hygiene, setting up your SPF record. Is anyone familiar with SPF? Do you have an SPF record? We're going to talk about that. So this differs a little bit from the breakdown of what we're going to talk about today, so we're going to skip ahead to this. So we're going to talk about what factors hurt your inbox placement and what you can do to remedy that. So everyone here familiar with spam complaints, bounces, blacklists? Does anyone have an idea kind of what they are? Have you ever dealt with them? Complaints. So spam is defined as unsolicited commercial bulk email. And so 86% of the world's email traffic is junk mail spam. So that's the reason why these filters, why ISPs work so hard to give the user a good experience, because most of the email is spam. Of course, your email is not, and our customer's email is not spam. But unfortunately, what every individual thinks is spam is different. So if someone thinks something is spam, then it's spam, regardless if you think it is or if I think it is. It's all up to the recipient. So going on what I just said, when we talk about unsolicited email, when you send weekly emails, but the recipient is expecting monthly emails, that could be considered spam. When a recipient accidentally clicks spam, that's considered spam. And how do we calculate spam complaint rates? So how does the ISPs, how do they look at you as a sender and decide whether you are sending too high of spam and to filter your email? And would they use something called a feedback loop? So Infusionsoft sends an email. It goes to the recipient's inbox and they report it as spam. So what an ISP will do is send a notification back to Infusionsoft. We'll remove the email and let you know that the recipient reported spam. And you can see that in the contact record. It'll say provided feedback. And so that's how we handle relationships with ISPs and process feedback loop complaint results. So complaints, how many can I have before I start being filtered? What's the acceptable amount? 1 for every 1,000 emails. So if you send 5,000 emails, 1,000 to Gmail, 1,000 to Hotmail, 1,000 to Yahoo, you are allotted 1 complaint per 1,000 per provider. Does that make sense? Sometimes that's hard because you send 10,000 emails but you only get 5 complaints, but if all 5 of those are to Yahoo, that could deem you as too high there and that could filter your email. The next type of complaint we have is within the application. So Infusionsoft has an unsubscribe link. Is everyone familiar with this link? Have you seen it? So when a recipient clicks unsubscribe within an email, this comes up and then they can choose whether they want to give you feedback or not. And there's also a free-form text box right here and they can put in comments. So this kind of absorbs, well, it's by law we have to have it in emails. But this absorbs some of the ways people can report spam. So when a person uses this unsubscribe link to report spam, it's not weighted as heavy as if they reported spam at gmail.com. So it's a good thing if they unsubscribe and opt out using this page. And we'll also go into the application in a little bit and show you where a roll-up of this is, and you're able to see who unsubscribed and what they said about your emails, if anything. A little warning, people have a freedom to type anything they want in this box, so it's unsolicited feedback. And the good thing about having this feedback is it's just as important to know how your recipients came onto your list as how they are leaving your list. And if you have a high unsubscribe rate, it generally means there's an issue with something that you're doing. And here is where recipients can give you feedback and tell you why they're leaving your list. Whether you agree with them or not, they are leaving your list, and this is where you can find out why they're leaving your list. The other important thing to note is that when you get subscribers, if you get tons and tons of opt-ins, but you have a really high churn rate, meaning people are leaving your list, then all of that is for nothing, because you want people to stay on your list, you want repeat customers, you want people to buy from you. So if you're doing really well on the lead generation part, but you also have a really high unsubscribe rate and people are leaving your list, then this is a great tool to figure out why they are and correct whatever's happening in between from the time they come on your list, from the time they leave your list. So yeah, like I just said, unsubscribes are bad. So we think these people are not interested, they're unlikely to buy. Making it harder for them to leave your list is not a good idea. So adding a ton of white space to emails so that they can't find the unsubscribe link, not honoring an unsubscribe and continuing to send them email, it's not a good practice. So always let people leave your list if they choose to leave your list. It actually hurts. So open rates. So if you have people on your list that are not opening, that are not engaging, that don't want to be on your list, you're really just hurting your own email metrics. They become a risk for spam. They hurt your reputation overall. And so right now, Zach's going to jump up, and we're going to go.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Good morning. So, as to the people that are unsubscribing, in order to clean the list or even in order to improve your reputation, many people don't open their emails. 80% of the people, they don't open the emails. We have an average of 20% opening. Many people say, can I exclude you from my list? So they open the email whether they want to continue or not. And then my question is the following. What is better? Do I, as the owner of the list, to exclude those people manually and don't open 2, 3, 4 emails one after the other, or to incentive people to leave the list if they are not interested in staying?
Thank you. That's a good question. So every single business is different. So for me to say after 3 months you should do this. So you need to find that sweet spot. Infusionsoft says after about, as a rule of thumb, about 4 months with no opens, no clicks, no purchasing, no Webform activity, they haven't participated at all in your marketing efforts. That's that time, and this varies. It could be 3 months, depending on how often you send. It could be 5 months, depending on how often you send. Find that spot, and then you start a re-engagement campaign at that point. So you don't have to say, oh, I'm just going to cut you off my list, and that's it. It's a loss. At that point in time is when you should re-engage, and that could be an incentive, a coupon incentive, some type of free offering, something to lure them back in to show activity, to show that they're interested again. Then continue marketing to them. Yeah, and then, so I would do that depending on your sending and how often you market, about 4 months. Take those people that haven't done anything and put them in a type of re-engagement campaign. And obviously, if you're a sender that sends every single day, you don't want to send 120 emails and then say, oh yeah, hey, here's one more. You're likely not to get anything. But if you're sending a monthly email, 4 months is good. If you're sending, and Jack's going to talk a lot about this in more detail, but there's sort of a sweet spot there where you can identify the people that were highly engaged in the beginning, wanted something, and started to drift off. Find those and then change your marketing towards them. And that can be an incentive-based re-opt-in confirmation email. Cool. And so right now we talked about domain health, checking your domain. We're going to show you a site where you can go check your SPF record, where you can check on if you're on any blacklists. It's called mxtoolbox.com. So this site right here is one we recommend. If you do a simple Google search for your domain health, there's plenty of resources, but this is a pretty easy one to navigate through and gives you some information. So if you does anyone care to share their domain for a check? Not all at once.
What am I?
Yeah, sure.
Canada. Canada. Then INTERCAMBIO.com.
Did you get all that?
Is that correct up there? Yeah.
So you throw your domain in the search bar.
No, it's IN. It's Canada IN.
IN.
Yeah.
You might have to, yeah. So what this is doing now is just searching the internet for any blacklists out there that are legitimate that you might want to know about, and it will just search your domain against those and let you know if you're on any type of blacklist. Did it work?
It wasn't.
Change that to an M to an N, yeah. And so you could do this at any time. And this is, This is something you should probably once in a while check your domain health because it's important. It's your business, it's your brand, and you should know what's going on. You can stay for the rest now. You passed the test.
What's wrong with the bot?
Oh, they just time out, so they just didn't check. So this is a good way. This is just a tool, and like I said, there's many out there, but just to get a pulse check on what's going on with your domain. You can do everything right, but unfortunately, there's a whole world out there that that can affect something, and whether that's spam, spoofing, phishing, that can have an impact on your domain. So that's always a good thing, especially if you start noticing possibly a decrease in opens or any of the metrics that you measure. If you see anything start fluctuating, it's always a good practice to just pop your domain in here and check if there's anything going on with it. Like me and Zach have worked with thousands and thousands of customers throughout the years, and they could be on a blacklist. They didn't know. One customer, I believe, was about a year, and he had no idea that he was on a blacklist. So and that was impacting his deliverability for a whole entire year. Another thing you could check with this site, Zach, can you hit the drop down? So that's a lot of, and we don't need to know most of this stuff, but another really important one is the SPF record lookup. And so your SPF is it basically is a policy on your domain that lets a receiving server say, you allow Infusionsoft to deliver mail on your behalf. And so receiving like Gmail will receive email and check that authentication and see if we're allowed to, oh, can you go down? If we're allowed to deliver mail. And so there is no Infusion mail, so let's get Infusion mail added, and you could see a boost in deliverability from that. So what your SPF record is a small snippet of text, which I believe we have the instructions on Infusionsoft.com, and they're also translated into Portuguese. This little bit right here, it's just a snippet of text, and whoever hosts, wherever your domain is hosted, you would go into there and just copy and paste that piece of text, and it should take within 24 hours, and it should be updated, and you'll have a published SPF record, which stands for Sender Policy Framework, and it's an authentication protocol for email. So I encourage everybody to go to MX Toolbox and use a site like this to monitor your domain health and reputation. So another item that affects your reputation, sender reputation, is bounces. So when you send email that gets rejected for various reasons, that's considered a bounce. And so when you have too many of those, that could signal to the receiving server that you're not a good sender, and that could take a reputation hit on your sender reputation and cause filtering to the spam inbox. So a hard bounce. So Infusionsoft, one of the awesome things about Infusionsoft is that it handles bounces for you. So we have a whole algorithm on the back end that processes these bounces all the time and then updates your application and decides what action to take. So that's a feature that we do that for you. A hard bounce indicates that there's a permanent reason that an email can't be delivered. So if you send to an email address that doesn't exist, that's going to be a hard bounce. And if you send to a large volume of those, that could be a negative signal to the ESPs and ISPs that you're not a good sender or you're having problems sending. The other kind of bounce is a soft bounce, which indicates a temporary reason. So if you send to bob@gmail.com and his inbox is full, they'll shoot back a notification to Infusionsoft that they couldn't deliver the email because the inbox was full. And so there's a couple of reasons why. If Gmail is having server problems, so that for some reason they can't take the email, they'll send a soft bounce back to Infusionsoft, and then we will retry the mail for you at a later time. And there's an interval.
Is there an automatic way to delete the hot policy immediately at the subscribers?
There's a way to find them, and you could tag them and then delete them. There's no auto, right? Yeah, there's nothing automatic that deletes hard bounces, but you can find them and take action with them. And we can go over that when we do some live demos with the recording. Yeah, and I get the question a lot, should we delete hard bounces from our database? Should we delete those types of addresses? And you can delete them. I've seen customers that want them out of their database, so they're not cluttered in there. Infusionsoft will not send to those addresses. So if you queue up your whole database and you have of 10,000 and you have 1,000 hard bounces, we'll skip over those hard bounces. So you can't accidentally send them. Yeah, so I've seen customers that want that data or those contacts in there for historical purposes. So they want to go back and pull a report 6 months ago of who bought this, and they might want those contact records in there, even though they can't send them marketing, but they just might want them in there for reporting purposes. And then we've seen other customers that are reaching limits for contacts in their database, so they just want them deleted. They don't care about them. So it's all personal preference. And so when we talk about hard bounces, what the acceptable level is, 5% and higher is not good. So that's when there is an issue, whether it's lead gen, so email addresses coming in on your web forms might be bad. If you start seeing high bounces, there's something's happening, so you probably should look into that. Then we have spam traps and unknown users. So unknown users to the recipient server would be before the @ symbol, something that doesn't exist, or a domain that doesn't exist. Commonly, which you guys have probably seen on web forms, would be misspelled domains. So Gmail, Gmail, Gmale, right? So that would be something that would be an unknown bad address, and that would hard bounce. Then you have spam traps, and spam traps are what get your domain blacklisted. We've dealt with them a lot. Infusionsoft has been blacklisted because our customers sent to them. So there's a couple different types. There's the recycled spam trap, meaning you have an address at gmail.com that you made 10 years ago, and you haven't checked it in 10 years. And so Gmail at some point will take that email address inactive account back, and then it's about a period of 6 months to a year where they'll tell whoever's sending to it, this isn't a good address, it's gonna bounce. This isn't a good address. And they'll do that for about 6 months before it becomes a trap. So then when you send mail to it, they say this person's not practicing list hygiene, this person has bad list acquisition methods, so we're gonna blacklist them because they're continuing to send to an address that doesn't exist. And the second type of spam trap is a pristine trap, and that means that it exists solely to catch spam. It's put out there by the different agencies that are owned by Blacklists, email industry, security professionals, and it only exists to receive spam, and that will for sure get you blacklisted if those end up on your list and you mail it to them. So this is a really, really interesting return path statistic map. As you can see, this was a period of about 2 years, 2012 to 2014. This was published in 2015. They monitored hundreds of thousands of IP addresses and blacklisting events. And the United States comes in at about 20% for senders that get blacklisted. Canada 19, Japan 0. That's impressive. So this number, that's really, really high. Really high, so 79%. So that just gives you this isn't put up here to say that you're a spammer, but there's an issue here, and there's probably several reasons that these IP addresses get blacklisted. Some of them might be because there's no law, there's no spam laws here, but that's kind of what you're up against. So when we talk about reputation, that's sort of a reputation factor that comes into play when people on the receiving end of email decide what to do with email, your email. And we talked about blacklists, that there's hundreds and hundreds, and we did the reputation check on that domain. It's just a good idea to constantly monitor that and check your domain. There might not ever be a problem, but if there is, handle it. There's different types of blacklists. Some are really, really, really important, like Spam House. We've talked about that, and I'm sure you've heard of that before. And then there's some really, really low-weighted ones that you would never have to worry about that probably aren't impacting your deliverability, but they're out there. There's something to be aware of as a marketer. If you're sending email, you need to be aware of what's happening. And when we talk about legal, the United States has the CAN-SPAM Act, and that's the main goal of CAN-SPAM is obviously to stop spam, but it doesn't really have too much to do with permission. They want you to have an unsubscribe link. They want you to have a physical address, and those are some highlights of United States. It's really their way of trying to protect the email ecosystem. So that's kind of a start. And you'll see more countries continuing to publish laws and policy around that. Canada came out with probably the most what's the word I'm looking for? Strict, yeah. The most strict policy. In 2017, they were going to allow citizens to start suing companies for spamming them. And that's unheard of. So that's sort of where, and I don't say that to scare marketers, but I say that that's where it's going. That's what's happening in the world is that sort of the users have more control. And Australia also has a published act, and several other countries do, but those ones are highlighted. Infusionsoft, when you abide by our acceptable use policy, you're already compliant with all of these laws. So I just wanted to point that out. So by using Infusionsoft, you're all set with all of these laws. But they are only getting stricter, and that's sort of the takeaway of this. And when we talk about Brazil, there are no laws. So that could be why we see the high amount of blacklistings, because people can kind of do whatever they want, and they don't have that policy. Permission. Does everyone here get permission to send marketing? Everyone's supposed to say yes. So it's basically the root of email marketing. It's probably the most important foundational part of how you begin that relationship with the person that is interested in your business. And so we're going to talk about that. And when we talk about legal policy, that's kind of where these laws are going, is to make sure that people want and expect what you're going to send them. So permission is a very, very important part of email marketing, if not the most important part. So an interesting return path statistic is 1 in 5 commercial emails that do not reach who you're sending it. That's a lot when you extrapolate that out to hundreds of thousands of messages. 79% of commercial marketing lands in the inbox, meaning 21% is lost, which might not seem a lot, but when you're sending hundreds of thousands of messages, that's a lot of email you're losing to the spam folder. And so that's why it's very important to get permission. So we talk about explicit versus implied permission. So when we talk about explicit, we're talking about, I sign up for your newsletter, so I expect your newsletter. I go to your website, I see a web form, and it says, sign up for this free ebook, and I give you my email address for a free ebook. Nothing more, nothing less. Explicit permission. Setting the frequency and content expectations of exactly what you're going to send at the very beginning of your relationship. Very important. Implied permission is, I go to your website, I fill out your web form, I want an ebook, and then I get daily emails every single day for the rest of my life. So that's sort of an implied permission, is they gave you your email address for a certain reason, for a certain lead gen magnet, and then you continue to email them over and over and over again. So that wouldn't be considered explicit permission. And we have So how do we get leads? Where does permission come into play? So you can web forms, purchasing products, personal one-on-one when we meet in this room today at an event. Social media is a big one these days. So when we talk about online methods, when I just use the web form reference, web forms, this is what it looks like. The best way to combat your free offer, your free ebook, is to add a checkbox that says, and you'll also receive marketing and other special offers. Setting content and frequency expectations on a web form, they check the box, they're on your list, they get the free ebook, and then they continue to get email marketing from you. And that would be considered explicit opt-in on a web form. Now, it's a little tricky gray area when you go into live events and personal one-on-one, because you meet somebody, they give you your business card. Is there a conversation that happens? How do you set expectations without sounding like a robot? How do you get that permission? And so being open and real with them is a great way. Sending them to your website after you meet them at an event to say, hey, check this out. Sending them a one-off personal email is a great way to sort of cultivate that relationship when you're not getting explicit permission on a web form. So when a contact opts in, gives you permission, What content will you be sending? How often you'll be sending it? And your identity is really huge in making a good impression at opt-in. And hopefully no one here is familiar with these methods of getting contacts, but we have purchasing email lists, list sharing, and third-party association and membership lists. So these are methods that 99.9% of the time don't get explicit permission and can put your deliverability and inbox placement at risk. Purchase lists generally are not opt-in. They can contain spam traps. These types of addresses are scraped off the internet and put into these big lists, and then you buy them and you think that they're catered to your segment and these people want information, but generally you will get high spam complaints. Your sender reputation will be hurt by it. So what happens once you get explicit permission? So we're going to talk about email confirmation. Does anyone practice email confirmation?
Well,
Yeah, it's a great practice. And it's highly recommended throughout the email industry. Better deliverability, confirmed address that there's a human being behind the email address. Even if to go so far as to say they come into your office and they accidentally write it down and then you misinterpret that letter that they wrote,
yes.
that's a good way to say, oh, you didn't confirm your email address, and then you can give them a call or something of that nature, but identify why they didn't confirm their email address. And the other thing with email confirmation too is if you are doing sort of a lead magnet and a couple emails and that's all you plan on sending, like Zach said, you can send a couple emails. If people are engaged and they're reading and opening and you see that, then send them a confirmation email with some type of incentive, get the double opt-in, they're engaged, they go on your list, and then you treat those people differently than you did when they just came in on your list. So it's a segmentation thing as well. If you look in the application, for a double opt-in, you'll see right here, it will be green with a check mark, and that means the email is confirmed. And just some deliverability stats on single opt-in versus double opt-in. So deliverability, when we talk about sending from Infusionsoft server to recipient server, double opt-in is 99.79%. Single opt-in 99.4%, which might not seem like a lot, but when you come over to inbox placement, 96.5% to 90.1%. Again, it might not seem like a lot, but when you're talking about conversion, that makes all the difference. And so this is just a quick comparison that breaks it down. When we talk about 90% versus 98%, again, 8% doesn't seem like a lot, but when you have the same size lists, 4,000 more emails go to the inbox, 3% clicks, higher, 10% conversion, you have 147 conversions. So inbox placement is key for ROI. And as I mentioned before, we are currently translating, and I think does everyone see some translation in the app? Portuguese? There has been some, but we are continuing to work on that, and email confirmation is what's up next right now. Awesome, so Zach's gonna come up here and talk about sending email and what that looks like with Infusionsoft.
So before I start, just want to give you a little background. So what I do on a daily basis is I work with individual Infusionsoft customers to evaluate their account, see where they can improve, fix any issues they have that will impede their inbox placement. So that's what I do on a daily basis. So when we put this together, we wanted to find things that I encounter on a daily basis that people are having issues with, plus some of the stuff that the Babel-Team, George and Fabio have told us. So this is just kind of a compilation of everything that I work with people on a daily basis. I've worked with over probably 2,000 individual customers with this. So it's just things that we see get the best improvement with inbox placement and deliverability. And so as we're going through this, if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to ask them, and we'll just go from there. So what we're going to be doing is just going over things such as authentication, such as the SPF record that we talked about, segmentation, frequency, branding, content, and we'll also go over the spam assassin score, which a lot of people have questions about. So the first thing I want to talk about is authentication, which is the SPF record that we talked about earlier. It's basically like a license plate for your car. It's basically saying, yes, I'm allowed to drive this car. So if you have SPF record set up, what will happen is when you send your email through Infusionsoft, if you have it set up, that receiver is going to see it saying that this is from Infusion Mail on behalf of your company, and they'll say, okay, they have permission, so let's go ahead and send it. If you don't have that set up, what can happen is they'll see that, and they'll see that, why are you sending this from this other person? This isn't real. We're not going to send it. So that's why it's such a big deal to have SPF record, because most of the time when I have a customer that has issues with inbox placement or low opens, low clicks, we find that they don't have an SPF record set up. We do that, and almost immediately they see a bump in their open rates. So segmentation. Segmentation is a huge issue with a lot of the customers that I work with. What they'll do is most of the time they'll just get all their opt-ins through all their different web forms, different signups, and then they just let them sit there in their list and they start mailing them all in big chunks. So they're not segmenting them based on what they signed up for, if they purchased a product, or their frequency that they signed up for. So what will happen is if you signed up for one ebook and then you start getting my daily emails, or you sign up for a monthly or weekly and you start sending multiple times a week, it drives complaints, which then drives your reputation down, which drives in-block placement down. So when we talk about segmentation with customers, we try to make sure that they're doing it based off if they purchase a product, based on their frequency, what they signed up for. There's a lot of other things people do based on how long ago that they signed up for. So we have customers that if they signed up more than 2 months ago, then they'll put them into a drip campaign to send them a little more steady emails. If they just opted in the last 30 days, they tend to focus more on those because that's tend to be when most people buy. And so kind of the whole thing of this, if you don't segment, you can generate complaints, which can cause blacklistings, inbox placement delivery drops, which then kind of goes into sending frequency. It all comes back to setting expectations and getting explicit permission. A lot of times people, they'll sign up for a weekly email and you stick to that for a little while, and then you start changing the frequency you're sending to them more. So instead of once a week, you're sending 2 or 3 times a week, which is not good. So what ReturnPath did is they kind of evaluated a bunch of different senders and analyzing their patterns and what they've been doing. And what they found is that when you start setting your frequency, there's either 3 things that'll happen. 2 are bad, 1 doesn't really have any negative effect. 2 main things is they'll mark the email as spam or unsubscribe, or they'll stop engaging in your emails, which is not good. We had a customer who they would send on a weekly cadence. Every Wednesday, 10 in the morning, they'd send their email. Very few problems, very few complaints, very few bounces, a perfect emailer. Then one week they sent an extra email on Tuesday and they generated over 200 complaints, when most of the time they get maybe 10 a month. So just that one change in frequency completely changed their customer's reaction. The other thing that they found is that if you change the frequency from more to less, you tend not to have any issues. They found some cases where they either didn't get any more unsubscribes or complaints, but they actually got more engagement because they reduced it. If you increase it, that's when you tend to have problems. And I'll actually talk more about the frequency and read rates after on a ReturnPath study here. And so this is a myth that we get a lot, is that the more emails I send, the better. People think that the more I send to my list, the better the chance I have of actually getting the open, getting the read and buy. That kind of made sense a couple years ago, but now with the new laws like CASL, the Australian Act, the US Can-Spam Act, they're doing that to kind of limit this kind of marketing, especially because, like Sarah said, 86% of email is junk email in the world. So if you're sending a lot of emails to your contacts, you have to compete with everyone else in the world sending to that recipient. So if you're sending them 5 emails a week and then 20 other people are doing the same thing and there's other people sending them once a week, you'll see people with inboxes that have 10,000 unread messages because it's too much. So what I preach to people is send targeted emails and reduce the frequency. So this is part of a study that ReturnPath did, and they basically surveyed customers from around the world, and they wanted to know, why are you unsubscribing, and then what can people do to keep you from unsubscribing. So the number 1 complaint was that people email too often, with almost half of the respondents saying that. The next 2 are pretty tied there. I didn't purposely subscribe, which a lot of time means that they signed up for an ebook and then you started sending emails on a daily basis. They didn't subscribe for that, and that's why they're marketed as spam. And then same thing with the sent irrelevant content. Kind of comes back to setting expectations on content. So this was done, I believe it was around 2014 is when they did this study, and this is from all over the globe, not just Brazil, not just the US, just from all over the globe. And then the other question they asked is, what can businesses do to improve their email efforts? Number one, send less frequent emails by more than double the next one. The other two are more informative content and more personalized offers. So that comes back to targeting your list and making sure you're sending segmented content to them. Another study that they did, there's two here. This one on the left here, this is the number of complaints per person versus the number of emails sent per week. And so what you can see, if you start to send, 3 to 4 emails a week, you're kind of in a good area for these people. They tend not to mark you as spam as much. But the minute you start going to almost daily, the rate increases dramatically. And it all comes back to that 1 per 1,000 or 0.1% complaint rate per provider. If you have all these complaints and you have a 0.25% complaint rate at Yahoo or Hotmail, they're going to start filtering your mail. And one thing that they'll do is if you send an email and you have a bad reputation because of a lot of complaints, and then someone else sent an email at the exact same time, Hotmail is going to be like, this person has a better reputation, I'm going to send them first, and I'm going to send you to the back of the line. So not only will your emails possibly be filtered, they'll be delayed. So if you're sending a time-sensitive webinar or a launch or something like that, and it has to go out now, and you have a bad reputation, your email could then get delivered an hour later. And then this other one right here, this is the weekly frequency versus the read rate per user. And this kind of shows the same correlation with this one, where the more emails you send, the less people actually read your emails. They found kind of the sweet spot is right here at 3 emails a week, gets you about the best open rate if you're sending more than once a week. Obviously, you send once a week, there's 1 email, so your open rates might be better. But you can see this, the more you send, the less people will actually read your emails. So another really big issue that I have with, or I don't have an issue, that my customers have issues with when they're sending emails and they're trying to figure out why people aren't opening or reading their stuff, is because they're not branding their emails. And by branding, we mainly focus on 2 things. 1 is your from address, and 2 is the style of your email. There's been a lot of changes in the last 3 years with security protocols through the big companies like Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo, and what they're doing is they're changing, it's called DMARC, and basically it's another form of authentication. And so what they're doing is if you're sending from a Gmail address through a bulk service provider like Infusionsoft, Constant Contact, Lead Lovers, Entreport, if you send with a Gmail address or Yahoo, a free address, and you try to send to, let's say, you have a list of 10,000, 5,000 Yahoo, you're sending from a Yahoo domain, right when you send, 5,000 will automatically be bounced because Yahoo will see that and they'll be like, hey, you're not sending from Yahoo. So why are you trying to say that you are? And they think it's like a phishing email or spoofing email, and they'll instantly just drop it and they won't send to it. So one of the main reasons I recommend having a branded business domain is because of security issues like that. Another thing is the inbox, when you look at it, there's only one real constant, and that's your from address. So if you're constantly changing your from address or it's not branded for your business, and you say, hey, your recent purchase didn't go through, update your credit card, and your business is Sarah's Pens, but it's coming from, Zach's bookstore, they're more likely they're not going to open that, and they're just going to instantly mark it as spam because it looks like a phishing email. So since it's the only constant in your inbox, we recommend using the same sending address as often as possible. Now you can change it, like say you have a newsletter that you send from newsletter@saraspens.com, and then you have billing from billing@saraspens.com. As long as that last part of the domain is the same, people are going to recognize that and feel safe opening that email. And then the other thing we talk about is just branding your email in general. A lot of people will send just plain emails that look like plain text emails that are HTML. So no banner, no logo, just black text and a couple links. That tends to be seen more as a spammy email, and people aren't as inclined to actually click through on those. So what I recommend is just putting a banner or a logo on top of your email and keep it consistent. So if you have your business's logo on there, keep it on there, and then don't change it every other week. Use the same kind of branded template every time, because it's just like the from address. If people see the same thing, they're going to start to trust it and be more willing to open and read it. So, there we go. Okay, so on top of branding, the next thing we talk about is personalization, because there's one thing to get to the inbox, but then getting someone to actually open your email and click through it, that's a whole nother challenge in itself. So if you're sending an email to someone, they open it, and you're not personalizing it, you're just doing a very vague, like, hey, it was great seeing you, you should come buy my product, or hey, thank you for buying my product, buy these accessories. You're gonna have people that, if they don't feel that personalization, they don't feel like they can trust you, and they just don't want to do business with you, especially with places like Amazon, Walmart. You can go there and get tons of things just by a click of a button. You really want to personalize it to try to get people to stay and keep buying from you. So the two main things I tell all of my customers is that first thing is always, if you have their name, you use it in their emails. You can use the merge fields in the app, and if you don't have their actual first name, it's just a blank because you didn't ask for that or whatever reason, you can actually edit those merge fields, so if it's blank, it'll put in something like hi friend or anything like that. And that's just another way to kind of get people to be more engaged in it. And the next thing is a lot of people, if they are following up for a product purchase or they signed up for registration, they will just do a blank kind of template saying, hey, thank you for signing up for my program. If you want to see more highlights or if you want to buy my ebook, click here. We found that if you actually talk about what they bought, like this person bought a MacBook computer, and you say that and then you say, hey, go to my online store to buy more, people are more inclined to do that because they're like, hey, I bought my computer, they acknowledge it. People are just for some reason more inclined to do it if you're more personalized. So when we talk about personalizing, we also want to talk about the actual content of the email itself. Two of the big things that are being flagged by spam filters now and that people need to kind of edit their content for is having excessive white space and a text-to-image ratio. So when I talk about excessive white space, if you have an email like this where you have 2 sentences and then you have 10 line breaks, and then you have another 2 sentences, then you have 10 line breaks between your unsubscribe link, what will happen is when a spam filter in an inbox reads these emails, they're seeing, okay, text, bunch of white space, text, a lot of white space, unsubscribe. And that'll pop a red flag, and they'll be like, hey, this is potentially spam, you should probably either not open it or open it with caution. Or they could just filter it straight to your junk folder. So these are things that weren't really a problem 5-10 years ago, which now with all the new laws and just the ecosystem itself changing with all the malicious spammers out there, little things like this are now being flagged and can actually get you to go straight to the junk folder or red flag saying don't open this or be cautious. So another thing that is getting really big now is text-to-image ratio. Return Path, Email and Acid, Spam Assassin, they've all analyzed this and they found that the sweet spot with the text-to-image ratio is 60% text to 40% images. So what will happen is if you go through and a spam filter reads your email and they see, okay, a lot of text, some images, a lot of text, images, it looks fine. But if you have an email that's one giant image or very little text and a bunch of images, spam filters can't read what's behind that image, and so they don't know if there's some sort of hidden code behind there that could infect your computer or what it's linking to. So having too many images in your email can actually be a bad thing. You'll see a lot of the templates that have been added to the Infusionsoft library have been tried to keep that 60-40 ratio. So if you don't want to use those templates and you want to add images, those are kind of a good gauge to see how your emails are. Another thing is just making sure you have your images spaced out, because if you have all that text jutted up against an image, that'll also throw a red flag. So another really big thing is links in your email. How many people do affiliate marketing or promote other companies' businesses in their emails? No one? Okay. So that's actually kind of a good thing, because what can happen is if you are promoting someone else's business and you're using their links in your email, and that link, the domain, has been flagged for potential spam or it's been flagged as risky, what can happen is your own personal brand can get damaged and your inbox placement drop dramatically. So Return Path in 2015 did this study where customer A and customer B are setting almost the exact same content, exact same list, everything is pretty much identical. The only thing is that customer B had a link in their email from another company that had been flagged for spam previously. And so spam filters picked that up, and you can see their inbox placement was in the mid to low 20s, while the person who had no bad links in their emails was up in the 70s and then going up to the 80s and 90s. So just having a link in your email with a bad domain can cause severe reputation damage. We have a lot of customers that they'll send emails with other people's domains or their own domain that's blacklisted, and it can cause major problems, especially let's say you send my email, or you send an email with my domain in it, my domain's blacklisted. Just by doing that, your own domain can be blacklisted. We have customers that happens to quite often, and they've done nothing wrong. It's just at domains associated with spam, and it can cause problems. Let's see. How many have you experienced Gmail tabs or had issues with people saying my email is in the promotions folder, not the primary folder? Okay, I see a couple of you guys. So another return path study. By the way, with return path, you don't have to be a member to access their data. You can go to returnpath.com and you can look at all their blogs, all their case studies that they've done throughout the years, and you can use it as much as you want. Something I highly recommend. I usually am on there 2 or 3 times a week, just looking at the different case studies or whatever the new information they're coming out with, because they're one of the leaders in email. So if they're talking about it now, then it's more likely going to be a big thing later on. So with this study, what they found is that 90% of all emails were delivered to the promotions tab. So it's not something where if you go to the promotions tab, your email's flagged as spam or your email's bad. That's just where the majority of it goes, because like Sarah was talking about earlier, they use their extremely complex algorithms to figure out your own habits. And so if let's say my cousin and I email on a daily basis or pretty often, and I interact with that, when Gmail released the tabs, they would see that and say, hey, this is someone that you constantly interact with, and so they put it in the primary tab. But if let's say Sarah, I only email every once in a while from my Gmail account, and it sees that, it might put her in the promotions folder first. And what they actually found was that the number of spam complaints was actually significantly less in the promotions folder than it was in the primary or the social. So with the promotion, your average, this is spam or marked as spam rate is 0.12%. You go to primary, it's 0.26. Social is really high because most stuff that goes in social nobody really cares about. It's random Twitter updates, things like that. So it's actually, they found that going to the promotions folder is actually not a bad thing. It helps because people say, hey, this is something that might have an offer, let me go through and look through it. So instead of having one giant folder, you now have it segmented. And so you have customers, they can put it in the primary tab if they want, but it's kind of up to you what you feel. So going into the promotions tab is not a bad thing. It actually is proven to be kind of a good thing. So how many of you are familiar with Spam Assassin and this number right here? How many of you guys have seen that? Okay. Question, if you see, so on an email, if you have a score, let's say, of a -2 or a 8, what do you think is a better score for inbox placement? A -2 or an 8. What do you think would be better, the lower number or the higher number?
Lower.
Yeah. So that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand, is that the lower the score, the better. This is actually currently our legacy content checker. We're working on creating a new one that's easier to understand and just more user-friendly than these random codes that you can't really decipher. But so yeah, the lower your score, the better. It doesn't guarantee you that you're going to get your email delivered to the inbox, but it gives you a better chance. Anything over a 6 in your score, you'll start to see deliverability issues. So I just kind of wanted to go over some of the more common codes that we see. And if you have a code that you've seen a lot and you want to know what it is, let me know and I can go over that with you. But kind of like what I talked about earlier, low text to image ratio. I mean, that right off the bat gives you almost a full point. So that's something that you want to take into consideration. See that, remove a picture or just add some more text. And then how many of you have seen this -2 sender and return path safe? Have you guys seen that before? No? So what this is a certification that we got from Return Path through our partnership. We've worked with them and they've certified us that we are a safe sender to where if a recipient receives our email, then it's something that should be accepted and that it's okay. So without this, it could cause a problem where you send an email and they're like, I don't know if this is good or bad, and so they don't know what to do with it. Having this safe sender return path, even if our IPs are down, our sender score is low, having that return path safe sender gives us an extra boost. We're currently working with Return Path to see about offering a service where you can get your own domain certified, which will help you if you stay with Infusionsoft or you go somewhere else. That'll help you, and compounded with our safe sender will help you get better inbox placement. Another thing that I didn't touch too much on, but it's the subject. A lot of times people will put in things like RE or forward, like they're responding to an email. That's considered a big no-no. It's considered very spammy, especially when they see it coming from a bulk service provider. Or things such as your email, your subject's in all capitals. It just doesn't look normal. It doesn't look like something that someone would normally get from a sender. And so that's heavily weighted in whether or not an email should be passed through a spam filter. There's a lot of people now using emojis and symbols. It's not something that we recommend because since it's so new, we don't know how that affects the actual sender reputation. So you could see someone that was sending before with really good open rates, and then they switch to using emojis in some of their subject lines, and they see a drop in complaint rates. That could be because of drop in open rates, could be because of the emojis. We just don't know yet. So until there's more data on it, we recommend not using them, or if you do, just limit them, just because we don't know the effect. So the last one here contains a URL listed in the gray list. How many of you guys have seen this or heard about this? No? So what this is, there's tons of blacklists, gray lists, brown lists, red lists, white lists. A gray list is just kind of it's something that we're on, Constant Contact, Entreport, any real email sender, like a bulk provider, is going to be on the gray list just because you send email for thousands of customers, so you don't have total control over what's sent. So it's just saying, hey, these people send email for a lot of different people. It's not a bad thing, it's not a good thing, this is just what they do. So when you see this, this is something that everyone's on. So if you think that's going to be the reason why your open rates are down or you're getting a lot of complaints, it's more likely something to do with content or just the frequency than that gray list because everyone's on it. The next thing we're doing is list hygiene. So how many of you guys here practice list hygiene or know what list hygiene is? Got one? Yeah. Okay. So when we talk about list hygiene at Infusionsoft, what we talk about is cleaning your list of invalid or unengaged contacts. The reason why we're doing this is because a lot of the spam filters and ESPs look at engagement now. So if you're setting to 100,000 contacts but only 60,000 are engaging, that means 40% of your list is not actually doing anything, and that's weighted against you if you go to Gmail and they're like, why are you sending to so many people who aren't open your emails? So kind of like what we're talking about here is that it's important because it'll affect your actual placement in the inbox. And another thing is, if you're not doing list hygiene and you have a list that's 10 years old, you could very well have a recycled spam trap on your list. And if you hit that, that can get you right on a blacklist without doing anything else. So, and when we do list hygiene, we also talk about re-engaging early, which we will go over a little bit more on a re-engagement campaign. But just that way you don't lose all of your list all at once. If you continuously do list hygiene and re-engage, you're more likely to keep those contacts on and have them buy something. So one study that was done was found that if you remove subscribers who are not engaged on your list, you'll see a 3 to 5% increase in deliverability almost automatically. Because a lot of people, when they look at open rates and click rates, they see like, why am I only at a 10%? I sent to 200,000 people. If you send to 200,000 people, 40,000 of them will never open your email, then your open rate's going to drop dramatically right off the bat. So you clean those out and you can actually get a better idea of what your actual open and click rate is. And by doing that, when you're not sending to those unengaged, Gmail and Yahoo, they're going to see that, hey, you don't send to unengaged, you do list hygiene, you clean your list, let's send it to the inbox. So another thing I hear a lot is that once someone signs up on my list, they're signed up for life. They want to receive my emails forever and ever and ever. Nowadays, opt-in is really good for about 6 months, because after 6 months, people will change jobs, they'll change inboxes. There's a lot of factors going involved with that. And one thing found is that at 31 months, so if you have your list for almost 3 years, 41 or 43% of that list is more inclined to mark it as spam. So if you have a list of 10,000 people, you have it for 3 years, you could have 4,300 that'll mark you as spam after 3 years. So that's another reason why you want to keep doing list hygiene. And they found that after a year, 25% of your list is just going to naturally stop engaging. And that's just because they change jobs, they change interests, they get a new inbox. So every year, just expect 25% of your contacts, they're not going to engage anymore. So if you're cleaning your list and you think, oh wow, this is a big number, expect about 25%. So 100,000 every year, you'll have about 25,000 people that'll just stop engaging. And so when we talk about list hygiene, we also want to, sorry about that. When we talk about list hygiene, we also want to talk about re-engaging your contacts, because there's no point in just going through and deleting your contacts every 3 months because they stopped engaging. Because it could be that they just, at that time they were going through something and they didn't really check their emails, or, for some reason they just stopped being interested. So what I recommend doing is at 3 or 4 months of no engagement, if you're sending weekly or monthly, take that list, segment it out, and then put them in a re-engagement campaign. And what we have with a lot of our customers do is they'll take that list and they'll put them into a campaign for a month, and they'll have 3 emails where they're offering them a free ebook or a coupon off their next purchase, or some sort of incentive to click a link and say, yes, I want to continue to receive your emails. A lot of these people will eventually get off your list just because times change. But by people doing that, they've been able to save contacts and convert them and actually make sales off of them. So that's why when we talk about list hygiene, we don't want to just go through and delete your contacts. Put them in a re-engagement campaign. Try to get one more bit of, one more order out of them, or one more referral, and then that way you can make more money. So this is another return path study, and what they did is they took a look at different lists and different contact sizes and see what they actually do throughout the life of their being on an email list. And what they found is that kind of the sweet spot is the first 30 days of someone opting in is the best time to get them to actually buy. So you'll see that at a month you have a 20% read rate, 10% click, your conversion at 5%, and for this company their average order value was $120. So that, on top of their complaint rates being low, their unsubscribes being low, that's kind of a sweet spot for this business. And then if you look at the same thing 2 to 5 months later, they now have 250,000 contacts they're sending to, and then their read rate drops to 18%, their clicks are at 9%, conversions, everything goes down, including the order value, only by about $10. But then the first sign of trouble, you see that their unsubscribe rate is now at a 3%. So it's 2 whole % more than what it was in that first month, which might not seem like a lot, but if you're sending to a large list, it can be a big number. And then what they found is after that 5 months, so pretty much between 6 to 9 months, if you're still sending to them, the odds of them actually opening an email and buying a product drop dramatically. You can see you went from a 20% read rate down to a 12%, your clicks and conversions are down, and then your average order value drops from $120 to $50. So it's still, yeah, you made a sale, but it's a lot less than if you would have targeted them right at the beginning and sent to them very segmented. And then you also see your complaint rates high and your unsubscribes high. So while you're still getting orders from them, you're also generating a lot more complaints, which then can affect that your newer customers, they're not getting those emails because your deliverability is going down. So another study was 2 businesses that are exactly the same. They have a list of a million contacts with 100,000 of them unengaged, 90,000 engaged. So company A here, they don't do any list hygiene. So when they sent to that million, they only had 70,000 delivered, and then 300,000 were not because of unengagement, reputation effects. They start out with the maximum read rate of 70%. Then you have company B who did list hygiene, got rid of that 100,000. They had 810,000 delivered and 90,000 did not get delivered. So they automatically start with 90% chance of an open rate. So 20% just by doing list hygiene. And if you think about conversion, ROI, that's huge. That's, you know, this was 700,000, an extra 110,000 contacts were delivered to. And if you only convert 2% of that, that's a huge amount more than just that 700,000. What we're going to do now is I'm going to go through and just kind of walk through how to do list hygiene in the application. Just in case any of you aren't aware, we've made it a lot simpler than what it used to be. And what we're also doing is we're working on iterating kind of how we do it to make it more automated. And then I'm going to show you some of the other reports that will help you with just list cleaning, and just understand what your list is doing. If you have any questions, you know, ask away. When we're done with that, we'll have time for questions, or if there's anything you want to see specifically in the app or have any specific questions, we'd love to get that information, because part of why we're here is not just to do the workshop, but also to get feedback so we can take back to our developers and our product managers. So if there's something that you guys want in the app or something needs to be easier, let us know so we can take it back to them. We're also going to be sending out kind of a survey here in the next week or so. And we'll be asking kind of the same questions, just what are some of the issues that you're having? What would you like to see? Because we want to make sure that we build the app so it works best for everyone. And if we don't have that information, we can't improve upon it. So be as open and honest, even if it's not email related. If there's something that's, you know, shopping cart, we may not be able to answer the technical questions, but we can get it over to our PMs and our devs to work on it. So let me go ahead and get logged into an app real quick. All right. So this is one of our test apps. So we might not have all the data that you would see in your own application, but we still wanted to take you through it. And let me get out of this. Okay, so the first thing that I want to just show you guys is just list hygiene in the application. How many of you have done list hygiene in your application? Anyone? No? Okay. So we've made it pretty simple. So what you want to do is just go to your marketing reports. And here you'll have a list of a bunch of different reports you can use to kind of just get an insight into your list. But when we're talking about list hygiene, we want to use the email status search right here. And we do have, Babel-Team went through and they translated this article and a bunch of other help articles into Portuguese. So if you want to have the actual step-by-step instructions, Babel-Team can provide that for you. But the easiest way to find engagement or the unengaged in your application is by clicking unengaged marketable right here. This will be based off of that 3 to 4 months of no engagement. So if a contact hasn't engaged in the last 4 months with your emails by opening or clicking them or filled out a web form, they're going to show up in this unengaged marketable status. So that's a really quick way to do it. So you just select that, hit search, and it'll pull up a list of all your contacts. This test app, we don't really have any unengaged in this one because we update it with contacts for our testing. But what you'll see here is just a list of all your contacts that are unengaged. You can tag them from here. You can run actions to send them an email, or start a campaign that's a re-engagement campaign. But
Can I, like, 6 days, can I choose the time?
yeah, so what you have to do, this is where, this is our old way, and it's a little more labor intensive. The instructions that we have cover that, that's in Portuguese, but what you'd have to do is you'd have to go through and click these three right here, the unconfirmed, confirmed, confirmed legacy. And before that, anyone have you seen confirmed legacy in your application? Anyone seen that in your own app? If you see this, don't worry about it. It's just when we built the application years ago, through the old like follow-up sequences where it's not visual, that's just a holdover from there. We have a lot of apps that still use those. So if you see confirmed or confirmed legacy, they mean the same thing. So they're both double opted in. It's just because we have older customers, we need to keep that status there. But so what you would do is you would go and click these three. And then under last engagement interval, you can set something very specific. So if you do every single day, we'd recommend doing list hygiene for the last 30 days, because that's roughly 30 emails they can click on. So what you'd have to do is just type in the dates here that you want to look for, search, and then that pulls up everyone who's engaged in that last 30 days. So then what you would have to do is tag all those contacts as engaged, and then you can pull a list of pulling the same 3 statuses here. But then you just look for anyone with that does not have that engaged tag, and that'll pull up your unengaged. So this is So this is the first iteration that we did where you just did the unengaged marketable. We're continuing to work on that to make it easier for you. But if you want to be specific, then you have to follow these steps, which the Babel-Team has translated. So it's kind of hard and messy right now, but we're working to make it better. So, and then once you do this, obviously segmentation, put them into a re-engagement campaign, try to get them back. The next one that I want to send you here is called...
Just a question.
Yeah.
Open and amazing is an engagement act, right?
Yeah, so we do engagement off of open rates, click rates, and Webform submissions. The reason why we do all three is because opens aren't guaranteed. They're not guaranteed with Infusionsoft, Constant Contact. Because of the way that email providers display emails, such as Outlook, you can have that preview pane. So if someone is looking through all their emails and they only look in that preview pane and read them there, and they never actually open them, then it won't show up as an open in the application. So that's why we use all three metrics, because there can be some where that they'll click but they won't open. So Sarah kind of touched on this earlier about unsubscribes. So I want to show you a report in here that can actually be very beneficial. So same thing, marketing reports. And then you want to click on the unsubscribe report. Once again, I'm sorry, we don't have any contacts in here that'll display information, but I'm going to walk you through it. So same concept as the email status search, but you can look for different types of feedback that were received. So unsolicited, frequency, you can select which ones, or you can leave it blank and select all of them, and you can pick specific time frames. So if you want to look at the last 2 years, it'll pull up this report here, and you want to make sure you have feedback type and additional feedback. Because what you can do is you can sort by feedback type, and I'll show you everyone who's unsolicited, who marked it as unsolicited, marked it as too frequent, any of the other steps we have there. With the additional feedback, though, this is where you'll get what people actually wrote in that comment box. So as Sarah said, it's unfiltered, so there can be some very inappropriate things said here. So just be wary of opening this up with people around. What you can do is you can analyze this, and if you have someone that says sends too frequently, and you have a lot of feedback says, I sent it for a free ebook and now I'm getting all these emails. And you see that multiple times, and that's a key to figure out, okay, I need to change whatever my permission setting is because people aren't aware they're going to get more emails. So when you do that report, it'll pull these up and you can export them, sort them, put them into a graph, see whatever you want to see out of it. But the main thing is just to use the feedback type and additional feedback. So once again, I do apologize, we don't have any examples here for you. But if you go into your app and you have anyone that's filled this form out, you'll be able to see it all right there. Any questions on the unsubscribe report?
How can I say, personalize, customize the message on unsubscribe page?
So right now, the unsubscribe page, there's really no customization available. Part of the translation process is we're going to give you a little more freedom. So if you want to add like an option, like you can add one option to instead of the other ones that are there. You'd have to go through to I believe it's the branding center, and then you can edit what the options are from there. Does that answer your question? Okay. So the next report I want to talk about, which you can use with this unsubscribe report, is, let me pull it up here. It's the Webform Activity Summary Report. So with this report, you can look at your individual web forms and see how many people are submitting them, how many new contacts are captured, and how many unique and repeat submissions. A good thing to look at this is if you have a lot of people that are unsubscribing, you can figure out where they're coming in from. So if you have everyone unsubscribing from 2 different web forms, then you should go through and adjust those web forms, change the verbiage on them, make sure that they're getting explicit permissions, setting expectations. You can also use this to let's say you notice that you have a drop in open rates and your bounces have increased and your complaints have increased quite a bit. If you look at this report, and let's say you see like this one has 300 submissions, but when you look, you only see 100 new contacts, 50 unique submissions and 300 repeat submissions. this is indicative that there could be a bot or some sort of malicious thing happening to that web form, and it's funneling bad contacts into your database. And that's what that whole worldwide attack that Sarah was talking about earlier is that web forms are being attacked and thousands of contacts are being submitted to people's web forms. So if you notice your opens decrease, your bounces increase, your complaints increase, look at this form on top of your unsubscribe form to see what's going on and if you have a compromised web form. So how many of you are familiar with the broadcast report after you send an email out? How many of you guys use that? Yeah. Do you primarily use it for just looking at opens and clicks, or what kind of, opens and clicks? Okay. So one thing that, with all my customers that I work with, I tell them is, while it's great to look at the opens and click rates because that gives you an idea of what's going on, you also really need to pay attention to the bounces and the opt-outs and complaints, because you could have 20% open rates, but then if you see your bounce rates start to increase or your complaints start to increase, that's something that's kind of an early warning sign that, hey, if I don't clean my list or check to make sure everything, like my web forms are okay, it can lead to problems with deliverability, blacklistings. So while opens and clicks are important, it's also a good idea to take a look at these bounces and complaints and get a good baseline. So when I talk with customers, I have them go through and do list hygiene, send a couple emails out, and then take a baseline out of those. So after they sent 5 or 6 emails, see what your average bounce rate is, your average complaint rates, and then stick to that. And if you see variances that are extreme, it's kind of an early warning. So there's a lot of stuff that you can't control or you're not able to see, but that's a good warning sign that there could potentially be something going bad in your application. So another thing that you can look at too is if you click on the complaints here, you can actually see individual email addresses that complained. I'm sure some of you are probably familiar with that. But since the application doesn't give you a breakdown of how many complaints you have to Yahoo and Gmail and what your complaint rate is I tell customers, take a look at that, and if you consistently see a lot of Yahoo complaints or a lot of Gmail complaints, that could mean that your own complaint rate at Yahoo is in danger of being over the limit. So it's not a hard, fast rule. If you're over 0.1%, they're going to stop delivering your email. But if you're consistently above that 0.1% and you spike sporadically, that's when you can get delayed. You can get issues with your emails being filtered. So until we get that kind of built-in reporting, I always recommend just take a look at your complaints every week. Just pull 3 or 4 broadcasts, see where they're at, and then just keep doing that to get a better idea. So, okay. So that was kind of the main reports we wanted to show you guys. Is there anything in the app that you specifically want us to take a look at? Have any questions on? Any want to see how it's done? Kind of how to use it? Anything like that? No? Yes. So.
Alguns outros provedores de...
One second.
Eu não sei se você vai falar.
I don't know whether we're going to talk about that, but some other providers, they make different tests with contents, and you don't have that yet. Do you have a forecast for that, for content tests?
So I'm guessing you're talking about kind of split testing, like A/B testing. So it's something that our devs are aware of. I don't know if it's something that we have coming out recently or if we have a specific ETA on it. Sarah, are you aware of anything? We don't have anything specific. But one of the reasons why we're here, like I was saying earlier, is if that's something that all of you guys need and you want, and we can get that backing behind it to give to our PMs, it can be bubbled up to a higher priority. Because it's something we've talked about, but there's a lot of integrations out there that can do that split testing for you. And there's some ways in the app you can do it, but they're just not easy, just by segmenting based on contact ID. So we don't have an ETA on that right now. I don't know if they're actively working on it, but we'll definitely bring it back to our PMs and devs and let them know that it is something that people are asking for. So, quick question. Do any of you guys use CAPTCHAs on your web forms or want to know how to add a CAPTCHA to the web forms through Infusionsoft? Anyone? Do you guys want to see how you can do it? Okay, perfect. So let's go. So most of you probably already know you can get to them by either Legacy or Campaign Builder. I'll show you real quick through Legacy if you don't know how. Just go to Marketing Legacy and then you hover over it and then you can add a web form. We'll just do this right here. Add a test. Or EST because I can't spell. Okay, here we go. All right. So I'll do the demo in this builder right here, and then I'll do it in the campaign builder because I believe they're slightly different. But in the legacy version, you'll just go over to your field snippets, and then it's just this box right here, CAPTCHA. You can add it right there. One reason why, or one thing that we're going to be doing is when we go to our new CAPTCHA, it's going to be prettier than this because this is kind of a very in-your-face CAPTCHA. It's not pretty. A lot of people don't like doing it because it doesn't look very good. But so when we do the reCAPTCHA, when it's the conditional CAPTCHA, what will happen is this will be invisible until someone goes to submit an IP that has a bad reputation, and then it'll pop one up. And it'll be, I believe it's just going to say, check this box to make sure you're not a robot. Kind of like the ones that you see more and more nowadays, very clean and simple. But one thing we recommend is if you have a lot of issues with web forms being attacked by bots or you're getting a lot of bad submissions, add in a CAPTCHA. Most bots can't actually break through that. So it's a great way to kind of protect your list and protect your web forms before, or if you don't have a chance to go and recreate a whole new one entirely. So let me go through the campaign builder real quick and we'll pull that up as well. Let's see here. All right. So do most of you use landing pages or web forms when you're creating web forms? Most of them web forms? Okay, perfect. Wow, I cannot spell. I apologize for that. I'll blame it on the jet lag from. So it's still pretty much the same thing, actually. The same CAPTCHA down here. I know they're working on building a new web form builder, which will be kind of prettier, easier to use, kind of like the new email builder. It's going to be a lot more simplified. But same thing, CAPTCHA. And that's about it. Any questions on that or anything else you guys want to take a look at? Nothing? Okay. So that's going to be what we have to present for you guys today. But what we'd like to do now is take time to answer any questions that you have, if they're app specific, not even just email related, or you want to see anything else that we just covered. We're open for questions. Anything you guys want to see? Anything you want us to talk about? Okay.